Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Rebecca Lawrence and this is Voices. In this set of interviews, I will be focusing on issues of inclusion, diversity and allyship through intimate conversations with wine industry professionals from all over the globe. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps us cover equipment, production and publication costs, and remember to subscribe and rate our show wherever you tune in. Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This is the Voices series with Rebecca Lawrence, and this week I'm excited to enjoy a conversation with Holly Berigan. Welcome to the podcast, Holly.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this.
So, I like to start many of my conversations by asking my guests to introduce themselves to our listeners. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're currently working on.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Holly Berigan. I'm the founder of MYSA Natural Wine. We're an online e-commerce platform and a natural wine club based out of the US. We actually started as an importing company. And then when COVID hit, we did a bit of both. And the importing was not really as easy. And the e-commerce just shot through the sky because of people wanting to order wine online. So that's been our main focus. And then outside of that, I actually also study sustainable agriculture at the University of Massachusetts. So I focused on viticulture. So maybe someday I'll make some wine. We'll see.
So did you start in the wine industry or did you have other ideas about what you might do with sustainable agriculture?
Yeah, so the sustainable agriculture part really did come from wine. But before that, my actual journey into wine, I studied diplomacy when I was in college, and I actually used to work at the embassy in Rome. I worked at the British embassy, and after I moved back to the US, I started doing consulting. And while I was doing that, I realized that I probably was not going to end up being a diplomat just because of some personal circumstances. So I was like, well, what did I love about it? I loved speaking Italian, French, and Spanish. I loved traveling. And I was just like, well, what else can I do that with? Wine. I love wine. I love food. And so that's just kind of how I exited consulting and thought I wanted to import wine. And then it just ultimately ended up being more on the e-commerce side and specifically in the niche of natural wine, just because I've always been passionate about sustainability. So that just kind of went hand in hand.
Yeah, that's like a nice way to bring together all of your interests and all of your skills. Like you say, the languages, the travel, but also sustainable agriculture, which is becoming increasingly more important for the wine industry and increasingly more talked about, I think.
For sure.
So at what stage did you decide to set up MYSA? Because it's obviously quite a brave choice. You're getting into wine. Okay, I'll just go for it and start an importing company.
It's honestly not at all a sexy story, but it is a funny and interesting one for people to maybe learn from. So I was working in consulting and I was basically terribly unhappy and making a lot of money. And I was like, and I read a book, like I'm sure you might have read the book, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And there was one specifically about like taxes. And the book was talking about setting up companies and using that to offset some of your taxes. So I was like, okay, well, I know I don't want to do consulting long term, and I really love wine. I started the WSET program, and I was like, I love this. Someday I will turn this into something. And at least in the US, you have 5 years from when you start a company to when you need to start making money. So I was like, I have about a 5-year runway to figure out what it is. And it came a lot quicker than I thought it would, which is great. But I initially was just like, I worked with the Italian trade organization a lot. And so I would go on these trips to Italy that they would help me with finding producers. And I was able to just expense all of that for the first couple of years while I was figuring out what I was doing. And then by the second year, I met my now partner at the consulting firm, and he was very into digital marketing. He kind of figured out the entire e-commerce part of it. And I was like, oh, well, this is taking off a lot faster than I thought. So we started the wine club then and left our jobs probably 8 months after that, or 6 months after we started the club. So that was kind of taxes is why I started the company, but also because I love wine. But that's kind of what made me take the jump. It felt safe and this thing that I was passionate about. And the worst case scenario was that I would not be able to figure out how to make the company work, and I'd just shut it down after a couple of years. But I knew that I would. I'm a very ambitious person, so I knew that if I started it, I was going to see it through. And sometimes you just kind of have to start, even if you don't know exactly how it's going to go. So that's Knowing what I know now, would I have done it this way? No chance. But here we are, and that's kind of, ignorance is bliss in some ways.
Well, actually, that leads me nicely onto one of my other questions, which was going to be, what advice do you have? Now you are that little bit further down the line, and obviously you've tackled this incredibly challenging period where you've essentially had to change the model of what you've been doing. So I wondered if you could share some nuggets of advice for people who are thinking of taking that leap and maybe need some hot tips maybe about what to do, but also what not to do.
Yeah, so I think that the main things that I've been at least talking about, I've done a few like women in business things lately, and the learnings that I've been talking to them about are that I always just joke, I'm like, don't sell wine online. It's very difficult. It's so much harder in the US than it is in the EU. We have a ton of friends that have amazing like programs in the EU, and it's set up really well for it. And we've been able to figure it out, but like the amount of hardship that we've had to go through to really make it work, I don't wish that on other people. We're very happy where we are now, but it is not easy. But the other thing, I mean, like, of course, it's of course possible. And if people are interested in that, I'm happy to talk with them more about it. But I think that the natural wine space, like if people are interested in natural wine, I truly believe that like right now is like an amazing time to be exploring that further. And I think that like it's becoming really hot for wine shops, wine bars, restaurants. Like it is making it like there's so many people getting into all aspects of natural wine. So we, have this niche within the e-commerce space, but like your local communities are like just they're starting to grow so much more. It used to just be you'd find it in New York and maybe you'd find it in Boston or whatever. But now, like, I mean, I'm originally from Oklahoma. And like I went to the local wine store next to my Grammy's house and there was natural wine. So like it's really coming about. And it's a really good time if you are interested in natural wine to like start any business really like related to that, because I think that there's a ton of interest in it from like the general public, and it's a really big it's a teeny niche that's growing like exponentially. Like organic wine's growing a ton. I think it's like 25% year over year or something. And natural wine is such a small subsection of organic wine, but my bet, I don't actually know because the definition is so loose, but my bet is that it's growing way more quickly than even the organic wine is.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm obviously from the UK perspective, it's been growing there certainly for the last 5 to 6 years, and in the kind of trade sector definitely has been huge for a little while, and now we're really seeing that trickle into the retail, and the consumers are hunting it out more and more. But even here in Italy, there's definitely a movement of this love from natural wine, people seeking out natural wine, and a move to making more of it. I wondered if you had any experience or any thoughts about maybe why this is happening now, and is there a particular type or group of consumer that you're particularly seeing not just buying but repeat buying?
Yeah, I think that if I had to like narrow it down to one thing, I really believe that it's a generational shift, because I think whether you look at the producers or you look at the consumers, like we're all looking a little bit similar. We're probably like millennial, Gen X, Gen Z. No, wait, yeah, Gen X, Y, and Z basically like are all people that have interest and like growing with each generation in organic produce, in being more local in the way that they consume. And so I think that, like so many producers that we work with in Italy and Austria, all over Europe, especially because they're more likely to inherit vineyards than our American producers are, they're making these generational shifts in the vineyards. And I think that that's like also, they're making what they want to drink. And typically like their peers, which are us, are also the people that are wanting to drink that. So I think that it's just going to continue to grow, because I think that millennials, like we're both millennials, and like I believe that probably both of us think, we look at the things we're buying and say like, oh, like, is this organic? Like, where did it come from? And I believe that like Gen Z is even more passionate about it than millennials are. So I think that we're going to just continue to see an increase in like conscious consuming, I guess, and natural wine just fits really well in that category.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. And I think you're right that it's a natural extension of this love for, wanting to make sure that what you're buying is sustainable. It has sustainability, not just in the sense of like being, organic and sustainable for the earth, but in other practices. So how you treat your workers and how you deal with people just generally, sustainability across the board. And like you say, this move towards a more conscious consuming. I personally think one of the things that the natural wine world has done particularly well it's recognized its market and has marketed to it. So the marketing of natural wine, the branding of natural wine is very different to what the wine world has traditionally seen. And I think this is a really clever way of taking this great product and saying, well, we'll share it, we'll make it appealing to as many people as possible.
Yeah. I think that, it's a double-edged sword, because it's like the cutesy labels and stuff. Like, some people think that it makes it not serious, but natural wine can be serious. But like, I think that anyone that's looking to like downplay that is really just thinking about it from the perspective of like trying to, I gotta just stop what I'm about to say because otherwise I'm about to say something that might offend some people. So let me just back up. I think that the people that like to hate on natural wine for it being either like thinking that the people that think that the like fun labels make natural wine less serious are also the people that assume that natural wine is just glue. And like, that's just a category and a part of natural wine. And it's an amazing one. And I think it's so fun and it's a great way to bring people in. But it's like very short-sighted, and that there's so many other pieces of that, like, DRC is also natural wine. So like, it just kind of excludes this entire larger picture of what natural wine is. So I think, and honestly, I think like maybe they're a little bit also haters. Like, they're like you said, like the marketing is going so well. Like, we've been able to bring in so many people to natural wine because they're like, oh, what like cool labels, what a crazy looking color. You know what I mean? And then, but the people stay because it's great wine. So
yeah, it tastes good and they trust its provenance. And also that sort of fun marketing doesn't necessarily mean that the wines are whimsical. These are serious wines. People are thinking very seriously about how they're farming. It's harder to farm for sustainability in many ways than it is to farm using big agricultural practices. These are not whimsical wines. They are very serious, but it is a section of the wine industry that doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think that's another thing that really appeals to this new generation of wine drinkers. It's opened the doors for wine. So it's not something where, you have to know your vintages and you have to know your producers and, you have to get really geeky about it. And, you need to know all the tech specs. It is just something that you can enjoy and be comfortable enjoying it because of its provenance. And I think that's really important as a conversation to continue in wine.
Yeah, I think that it's nice too, because on a larger scale, it's making wine accessible to more people and easy to understand. And I don't think the traditional ways of, understanding classical wines need to go away. Like, I'm love nerding out as much as the next person about, crus and vintages or whatever. But most of the time, probably 90% of the time, I just want to have a really nice wine with my food and just like chill, So, and that's how most people are. Like, it's such a small subset of people that truly want to learn all of those things. I think it's great. I think it should still continue on, but like the 90% of probably more, 95% of the wine world needs to like be able to access it and feel comfortable asking questions and understanding. And I think that's just an easy way to do it in the natural wine world. I think because natural wine is ultimately more expensive than conventional wine, it's helpful to have like ways to make it seem accessible or sexy or exciting to buy it. Because otherwise, like if all the bottles look the same and like the natural wine looked the same as the conventional wine and it was 30 versus the conventional was 15, you're probably not going to buy the natural wine because it all just looks the same, versus it's like making it more appealing.
I was actually about to lead into questions about Italian wine. So, as you said, you've lived and worked in several countries, one of those being Italy, and you do speak Italian, which is always really handy in the wine industry because you could just have those geeky conversations that you want to have with winemakers. So I wondered if there were any particular Italian natural wines that you like, or if there's like a favorite region that you've been exploring. Tell us a little bit about your Italian wine experience.
Yeah, I mean, I just love Italian wine. Like when I first started out with the business, like the very first place I went to was the Italian wine ITA, what the Italian Trade Organization, specifically the wine part of it, because I knew those people from my previous work. So I probably met with like, I don't know, 100 like natural winemakers in Italy versus maybe I did live in Spain for a year after, so I guess maybe a little bit few more Spanish ones, but after Spain now Italian. And I love like honestly like so many regions. I think when I talk to people about natural wine in Italy is I'm like I think that people generally in wine get really caught up in Chianti or they get really caught up in like Barolo. And like, of course, there are some really good natural winemakers in those regions, and I love those wines. But I think that natural wine is having really exciting things happening. Like, honestly, I think Sicily is already so hot. Like, everyone knows about it. It's discovered. But like Calabria has really ended up having a really interesting moment because Gallipoli, yeah. So there's that one, and then there's another one, or like at least the region that's called like it's like one of like Giro. That's it. So there's like one specific wine that like is just like the best price performing natural wine. It's called Giro, I think. It's like right from that area, and like it's really putting Calabria on the map. And we've had some amazing ones, like I think it's called Minats, like this new producer from there. Like I think that they're just really making these amazing wines that are like super historic. It's like wines from the Olympics, like thousands of years ago, but like no one's ever heard of them, you know? So I think that natural wine is going to be really great at putting like Puglia, Calabria, definitely like basically what it's done for Sicily, I think it will start doing for the rest of the bottom of the boot. But then also like I honestly love like one of the wines we first imported was Valpolicella's. So we had like an Amarone, we had a Valpolicella, and those were just unbelievable, like beautiful and like, you know, sort of traditional, but not quite, because like they were able to get the designation, but make everything naturally. And I'm always so impressed when natural winemakers are able to do that, because so many times it's hard to work within the confines of the DOC or the DOCG and still be able to make your natural wine. So I've been obsessed with them. Their name is Il Monte Caro, and I just love them so much. So those two regions are great. And I think I'm interested to see with like even like Molise or like Umbria, like we're just going to start seeing way more wines that are coming out of the less known regions. And I just love that. I love seeing that. I mean, even just like new countries coming on the map, like Sweden starting to make wine, like this is crazy, you know? So I just think it's so fun and funny to kind of see what natural wine is kind of doing for every country that it's working in. I really believe that it's putting, like, for example, like the Calabrese thing, same deal like Rheinhessen in Germany. Like in the conventional wine world, we're not normally focusing on Rheinhessen, but so many natural producers are coming out of there and they're like really putting their stamp on like German wine in that regard. So it's really exciting. And yeah, Italian wines are just great. Like you can't put them all in. There's so many different styles and types. And I also think that, just talking broadly about my experience with natural wine in Italy, I think that they do a wonderful job of making orange wines, like the skin contact wines that come out of Italy. I feel like they're just unreal. Like obviously, you know, it traditionally starts from Georgia, but then like, you know, the like Grabner and Radicon, like those guys are just so iconic, and the way that they're producing these orange wines is just unbelievable. So they like are really setting the stage for what everyone else is trying to replicate in the rest of the world. So we're just going to continue to see really interesting, I think, both regions coming out of Italy and styles of wine coming out of Italy. And I think that a lot of that's going to populate from the natural wine movement.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up the skin contact wines, because they're actually one of the things that really made me fall in love, not just with Italian wine, but actually with white wine in particular. As someone who is traditionally just was a red wine drinker, I was really searching for that kind of extra depth in a white wine, something that would maybe make it stand out a little bit for me. And adding that extra depth, that textural component, really launched me into my love affair, not just with Italian wine, but with white wine. And also drew my attention to some of those, like you say, those smaller regions like Molise that maybe people don't immediately think of when they think of Italian wine, but now through natural wine in particular are really getting to kind of set their stall out on the scene. So I'm so glad that you could bring those up. So thank you so much for this fantastic conversation today, Holly.
Thank you.
And for joining me on the Italian Wine Podcast. Where can our listeners find you, online or on social media?
Yeah, so it's MYSA.wine. That's actually our website and our Instagram handle. That's the easiest place to find us. We also have like a Facebook group for people learning about natural wine. But if you basically just look MYSA.wine, you'll be able to find us on all the channels.
So check out Holly's social media, check out MYSA. Thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to follow us on social media, subscribe, and of course donate on the website so that we can make sure these great conversations keep flowing.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, Cin Cin.